Ed Zimmerman here at Ed Talks, the podcast where we unpack the energy storage industry and look at the different factors influencing the buyers, the users, the builders of these systems, not only in the US market, but of course globally as well. So we have actually a lot to talk about today. I know in our last episode, we talked about changes in legislation and some of the market forces that are at play here that are really having a significant influence on US power demand. Today, I want to talk about the most recent changes from a legislative perspective in the US, and that is, of course, the Big Beautiful Bill. So what does the Big Beautiful Bill do that is having an impact? Well, there's a couple of big sort of standout changes that are present here. First and foremost, about $500 billion in potential tax credits have evaporated. So that is for certain sites, certain installations that were economically marginal. That's going to have a major impact on those. So we should probably expect to see reduced number of deployments in some of those instances. Now, renewable technologies are not being impacted equally here. So solar and wind, really just not good legislation for those industries. This is going to be quite challenging, I think, in the Sun Belt and in areas of sort of the Midwest where we have sort of established economic environment that is favorable to those technologies. We'll continue to see investment. Outside of that, I'm just not sure it's going to work out. And so, that's a pretty significant hit. Most of the new power generation in the US that's been added over the last several years has been renewables based. And now these changes in the tax structure around that, it's going to slow down the addition of new generation. And we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. EV tax credits, unfortunately, gone. Now, for a lot of buyers, the decision to buy an EV was not necessarily driven by a tax credit, but we're seeing the impact now. Sales rates for EVs for a variety of different reasons are going down. That'll likely continue. So we're going to have to wait and see sort of how that shakes out. Big one here that impacts organizations like CMP and some of our partners in energy storage is all the notes and all the comments and all the changes related to what are referred to as foreign entities of concern. And so these are nations around the world that have been identified as adversaries to the United States in particular, but in many instances, a lot more broadly than that. And we're talking about, China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, places like that, where if we are using technologies or there is any ownership associated with any of those countries within an enterprise in the US, significant amounts of debt that are owed to these nations or banks or corporations within those nations, any IP associated with these countries, long-term contracts above a certain value associated with these countries. All of these things are going to be essentially disqualifying products that are being deployed in the United States from the tax credit structure. For some companies, this is very, very problematic. We already know, of course, that most of the lithium batteries that are in the market right now are being made overseas in China. If the IP associated with those batteries is owned by the company that is deploying them, and they're having them made in China, sort of on contract, and they're saying below the threshold percentages, they'll probably be okay. But any organization that is sort of wholesale dependent on foreign battery manufacturers for their products, they're really going to struggle. Those batteries represent a significant proportion of the value of a system. And, some of that could have been offset previously based on, additional content and work done in the United States. But under this structure, a lot of those mitigation measures are no longer going to be available. And so it's an opportunity for some. It's really an existential threat for others. If you're a US-based company, you own your IP, you've developed your own software, you're not in any meaningful way reliant on Chinese supply chain for anything other than sort of basic inputs, primary cells or components. The likelihood is this is good for you because it's going to disqualify a lot of your competitors. If that's not the case, though, there's going to be a lot of scrambling in boardrooms in some of these organizations across the US as they seek to reorient that supply chain and meet those new target threshold percentages. Right now, anything exceeding 40% Chinese content, you're going to be really struggling on the ITC front. that by 2027, 28, that goes to 25%. And so, any system that's in the market right now that is able to hit that 25% threshold is really going to be a standout. A lot of companies are going to struggle with that one. So, that's sort of how things are impacting, energy storage in particular, the foreign entity of concern legislation. Like I said, opportunity for some, existential threat for others. But more broadly, what is this going to mean for, the energy industry in the United States? Well, what we suspect is it's going to lead to higher energy costs, right? With the elimination or significant reduction in solar and wind that we're anticipating. In general, the disqualification of a lot of energy storage products that are in the market right now from consideration because of that foreign entity of concern part, and the just exploding demand for power, between 2.5% to 3% increase in power demand every year in the U.S. right now. And that's largely related to things like AI data centers. The U.S. power grid is going to struggle. It's really going to struggle under the weight of those combined effects. I think it's anticipated right now that we're going to be able to bring other sources of power online, gas generation, behind the meter generation, things like that. Absolutely, right? There are plenty of products out there. Natural gas is widely available. It's largely environmentally okay-ish. And affordable, but the lead times for major generation equipment are 3-5 years. Those are going to be really, really problematic. This is going to start to emerge as a significant barrier to growth in really key market sectors, in the U.S. And that's really our concern, is that we're going to see a slowdown and maybe even a retraction of investment, which is really problematic. We do have opportunities that exist, for genuinely made in America products, organizations that are working with U.S. partners to develop their technology, U.S. software, U.S. controls, that are really seeking to de-risk that supply chain. This is a really excellent opportunity for those organizations, and we work with several of those companies. And so, for some, like I said, big problems. For others, it's a really good opportunity. One of the other things we're expecting to see is sort of a shift, I think, in energy storage demand away from traditional grid sources and a lot more to C&I behind the meter. I think you're going to see a lot of private enterprise struggling under the burden of higher energy costs and the threat of brownouts and the impact that can have on their operations. And they're going to be investing independent of any kind of government support or any kind of tax credit structure in ensuring that their facilities and their companies are able to stay up and running, even if we have an overburdened electrical grid. And so deployments for C&I, deployments behind the grid, I think we're going to see a lot more private investment in those vehicles as a hedge against some of the challenges the industry is going to be facing. So that's sort of our high-level summary of the Big Beautiful Bill, the opportunities, the challenges, the risks associated with it. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, like and subscribe. We'd love to hear comments back from you. If you think I'm full of crap, let me know. Or if you agree with some of what we're saying and would like to contribute in some other way, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.